You heard that. Welcome to the last real presentation of the class for the semester. Here is Big Red, the gay turkey who didn't really want to come in the house. So he says hello. He's right in the backyard. Yep. He's going to make it through the holidays and he'll do fine. So yes, Big Red the gay turkey was born that way. He he does pay unwanted attention to the roosters. That's why I know he's gay, but I still love him. Anyway, love him and love him under any circumstances. But anyway, yes, happy holidays. This is the last real presentation. What we're doing, goodbye, Big Red, is for today, extra credit quiz. I just posted on the module. It comes directly from today's presentation. Final exam, 2 weeks from today. Officially, the day for the final exam is December 2nd. So you have the day before and the day after, 3 days to finish up the final exam, which will be off of the study guide, which I will present live and in person Tuesday. Now, many of you are going to be on the road. So I expect that to be kind of a low attendance day, but I'll be here to do my part, and you'll have, again, a week and a half to look at it. Most of the test will be taken off of that particular, off of the study guide. But it's also open test, open book, open notes. You can look up anything. You have no time limit. So anyway, if you can't see it, if you can't be here next Thursday because you're on the road, fine, it'll be posted. So, and then we're on the road. Anyway, today we've done all the other media. The last one, which really ties it all together, is the internet. The internet obviously has changed everything, and it continues to change the way we look at the world. Big thing is we're all wired. We're all connected 24/7 to the internet. Can't escape it. We're always here. And one quote that may come up on the test, Thomas Friedman from the New York Times, a columnist, says, "The world is flat." Any idea what he means, like the world's flat? You can probably find folks who think that. But the idea is that, remember when we talked about the telegraph, all of a sudden California wasn't that far away, Texas wasn't all that far away, because you can get something, you can get a message immediately. Well, now we're talking about the whole world. You can get somebody on the other side of the world in a second or less. I have a cousin, Vitaly Ziblik, who's in Belarus. Right now, they're having some problems with the Polish border there. Vitaly is a radio journalist. It's funny, we have that genetically in common. And I could send him a text or an email, and he'll get it. Of course, right now it's probably about 10 o'clock at night there, but yep, other side of the world. I have another cousin who has a PhD in communication, Simon Mahon, in Australia. I could talk to him. So yeah, we're not all, we're not on the other side of the planet anymore. We're all connected in a flat world. On the other hand, we all know the internet's not terribly reliable. In a sense, we're all journalists now. We're looking at right now, there's two big trials, Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia and Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin. Well, for the death of Ahmaud Arbery, that the evidence all comes in from cell phones. People have recorded crimes, events, speeches, family gatherings. We are all collecting information, posting it. So I guess everybody is in the media now. We talk about the media, guess what? Look in the mirror. And that disrupts other media economically, content-wise. When everybody's looking at each other's social media, they're not looking at the local TV news or print news. It's all different, but it still uses other media. The phone, you can get the radio, you can get TV, you can get movies on your phone through the internet. So that's what we call media symbiosis. They all work together. And yes, it is ubiquitous. Ubiquitous means it's all around us. We're talking on over a computer now. We always have our phones with us. We're always looking. Some basic terms. The internet is the system. It is all the connected computers. It's everything out there. The web is the web pages, the system of pages on the internet. For example, email is not a web page. A spreadsheet is not a web page. That's a specific thing that's on the internet using HTML. That is the language. That's the Morse code that all the computers read that are all in common. TCP is your computer's address. We all have one. Different thing with the internet than all other media. All other media were made to be profit-making. They're made by inventors who want to get patents to license their items to make money. Not the internet. It was invented by the government, the US government originally. It wasn't meant to be commercial. The good news on that is a whole bunch of government scientists who thought we've just put the world's knowledge and everyone will share and it'll all be wonderful. And they never foresaw cyberbullying, any of that stuff. So it's different. Not only that, since it was never meant to make money, folks and entrepreneurs have had trouble monetizing it, particularly mainstream media. Why pay for a subscription to the New York Times or the Washington Post when you can get Newsmax for free? So it's a challenge. Here's a little background.
Our goal is to help people cook some of the best dishes possible. DocuSign allows me to continue running the
We've talked a lot about advances in biotech, but none of those could have happened without advances in computing. It's time to get back to data and explore the unlikely birth, strange life, and potential futures of the internet. The theme of the history of computing is that what we mean by computing keeps changing. With the invention of the transistor in 1947, the computer started to shrink and speed up and change meaning yet again, becoming a ubiquitous dimension advances in computing. Changing. It's time to get back to data and
okay, keeps changing.
Dimension of contemporary life, not to mention a totally normal thing to yell at. Hey, Google, can you roll the intro?
not sure.
In 1965, Electronics magazine asked computer scientist Gordon Moore to do something scientists are generally taught not to do: predict the future. Moore guessed that roughly every year, the number of electronic switches that people could squeeze onto one computer chip would double. This meant computer chips would continue to
Yep, they've gotten smaller and faster. We don't need to talk about computer chips. We'll get to the internet.
the late 1950s, the US was really worried about Soviet technologies. So in 1958, the Secretary of Defense authorized a new initiative called the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. DARPA set about solving a glaring problem. What happened if Soviet attacks cut US telephone lines? How could information be moved around quickly even after a nuclear strike? A faster computer wouldn't help if it was blown to bits. What was needed was a network.
There you go.
So in part to defend against information loss during a war, and in part to make researchers' lives easier, DARPA funded the first true network of computers, the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, better known as ARPANET. People give different dates for the birthday of the internet, but two stand out. On September 2nd, 1969, ARPANET went online. It used the then new technology of packet switching, or sending data in small, independent, broken up parts that can each find their own fastest routes and be reassembled later. This is still the basis of our networks today. At first, ARPANET only linked to
Okay, you had a few universities linked together just in case we got nuked. They took, if the Russians took out DC or New York, our universities could still talk to each other. They had this established network. Interesting little sidelight, one of these scientists in Illinois, trying to get messages back and forth, invented the little @ sign to let you know it's email. He did that on his own time. The guy who invented email was just noodling around, and he invented email. Again, no financial incentive.
a few universities, but it grew as researchers found that linking computers was useful for all sorts of reasons, nukes aside. And then on January 1st, 1983, several computer networks, including ARPANET, were joined together using a standard way of requesting and sharing information, TCP/IP. This remains the backbone.
Right. Everybody knows where everybody else is because they know their address.
Of the internet today. Meanwhile, French engineers created their own computer network connected through telephone lines, Minitel, back in 1978, 5 years before TCP/IP. Minitel was retired in 2012, and the Soviets developed their own versions of ARPANET, but after 1991, these joined the TCP/IP-driven internet, and the virtual world became both larger and smaller. The internet in the 1980s was literally that.
Like interconnected computers. You know, you had different little computers at work that weren't all connected with the rest of the world. That came a little later.
Network interconnecting computers. It didn't look like a new space yet. For that, we can thank British computer scientist Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web in 1990. Berners-Lee pulled together existing ideas like hypertext and the internet, and
Hypertext, HTML, that language, that Morse code of the internet. Tim Berners-Lee put that together to help us see web pages. He was working in CERN, Switzerland, where the Hadron Large Collider is. That's a big nuclear particle accelerator. I've been told that people think that that is a direct link to Satan himself. Why? When they launched it, the scientists did a Cirque du Soleil sort of premiere, and people thought it was scary. Again, they learn crazy stuff from the internet.
and built the first web browser to create the beginnings of the functional and useful web we know today. The web had profound effects. It brought the internet to millions of people and brought them into it, making them feel more like they had a home online, a virtual place to represent themselves, meet strangers all over the world, and troll educational video shows. The web also democratized the tools of knowledge making. From World War II until 1990, building computers and using them to do work was largely the domain of elites. A short time later, we can trade software on GitHub, freely share 3D printing templates on Thingiverse, and benefit from the collective wisdom of Wikipedia. It's as if the internet now contains not one, but several libraries of Alexandria. They've radically changed how we learn and make knowledge. Just as scientific journals were invented as printed objects, since 1990, they've moved online, though often behind.
Yep. Paywalls, they have to make a living, those scientists who do the research. So if you don't want to pay for it, you get less reliable information.
Behind steep paywalls. In fact, Russian philosopher Vladimir Odevsky predicted way back in 1837 in his book, The Year 4338, that our houses would be connected by magnetic telegraphs. And that came true only 150 years later, not 2 millennia. So what's going to happen in another 150 years? Well, computing seems to be changing unpredictably, not only because computers are getting faster, but because of at least 3 more fundamental shifts. One, scientists are experimenting with quantum computers, which work in a different way than classical binary ones. This is called superposition, and it has the potential to make the computers of the future much faster than today's. This could
Yeah, and then he also talks about artificial intelligence, having computers think for themselves. So just when we think that everything's okay, boom, it's going to change all over again in your lifetime. Mine too. So little recap here. Recap format. Come on. Here it goes. Size 20. Okay. Through the 50s and 70s, it was the Cold War. We were afraid of getting nuked by the Russians. They had missiles in Cuba. So in response, the government, who really invented the internet, the government put scientists together, created ARPANET using the Advanced Research Projects Network and the RAND Corporation. RAND stands for Research and Development. All, interconnected, decentralized networks at universities. Something blows up in DC or New York, the universities could talk to each other. No oversight. The universities could do whatever they want. 1971, as I mentioned, email comes in. Hundreds of universities get in the act. So they're kind of all connected, sharing information, research, all that. In the 80s, things start to change. You start the TCP IP idea that everyone could talk to each other and every computer has an address. So they're starting to get more connected. And then in 1984, 93, it started, announced in 84, Steve Jobs announces the home computer. Before this, they all had their nice mainframes, big computers connected with each other in universities. 1984, everybody has a computer. He knew he was onto something.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification methods.
Super Bowl commercial, January 1984.
It's time for history. Ideology, where each one of it secure from the pests of their complicated. More powerful a weapon than any fleet. Where are we on earth? We are one. Resolve one cause. Our nation themselves alive, and we provide them with their own cause. We shall profane.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh, and you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
They knew that they had something. Steve Jobs, the personal computer. Everybody can have a computer in your own house rather than having to go to a university. Mind blown. You don't have to rely on the government or a government grant or your university. You could do your own thing. Microsoft 2 years later comes out with not a computer, but Bill Gates decides, just like Morse and Berners-Lee, it's the software that matters. He devised the operating system that Microsoft uses, the OS1, and then he sold the software to IBM to make the computers, and he sold the software again to Dell to make the computers. So, again, two models. Apple controls the software and the hardware. Microsoft just controls the software, let whomever make the computer. Web browsers started in 1983. At least the ideas of them. Mosaic was really the first one of trying to search the internet before really the web. Then we start having social networks.
You got mail.
Yeah. America Online and GeoCities in the late 80s didn't really have the internet. They had the phone line. You called in, you pay them a fee, you put in a disk that has a phone number, and it calls a phone line and it connects you to everybody else who's on AOL or GeoCities. We call that a walled garden. It's a network, but it's a network you pay for over the phone, and it's not with HTML or TCPs. It's a closed network called a walled garden. The 1990s, boom. That's when things really happen. Berners-Lee comes up with the WWWs, the idea of internet connected pages, and 2 years later, that was the idea in 1990. 1992, as we were saying earlier, I should take this off. Web browsers were actually thought of earlier, really implemented in 94, but comes up with the program HTML, putting the web pages together. So you have that set up. And then in 1992, the US deregulates ARPANET and says, hey, it's yours. Anybody, have fun. Enjoy. They turned it loose. You didn't need to be at a university. It's up to you. 8 years earlier, Steve Jobs gave us a home computer, and then the government gave us the internet. Now, here we're teaching in Tennessee here. Tennessee Senator Al Gore wrote this legislation that made that happen. So he claims to still, he invented the internet, not really, but he wrote the legislation that turned it loose. So all of a sudden you got this thing. What do you do with it? Well, what do you do? It really harkens back to the early days of radio. Remember, Lee DeForest and David Sarnoff thought we could broadcast signals, whereas before Marconi thought it would be just point to point, use it differently. Different people started thinking, oh, we can do more than web pages.
Much my 23andMe reports taught me about my health. And that's why I knew how meaningful this gift would be for my family.
80% get genetically meaningful health info from their 23andMe DNA reports. 80%. That's 8 out of 10 people who could get something enlightening, something empowering, something that could change everything. Info that could give you greater control of your own health. And it's right there in your DNA. So this season, give the most meaningful gift of a DNA kit. And right now, our health and ancestry kit is just $99.
Do you know what the future holds?
Smart. Virtual pets sought electric sustenance.
People didn't really know how much power was inside this thing.
A military mover invaded suburbia. George Foreman plugged a little item to knock out the fan.
Boom, I was a happy man.
And a guy named Tim wove a web of information that changed the world.
Important security message.
90s tech.
Your computer
On
has been locked up. Your IP address was used without your knowledge or consent to visit.
Welcome to, who knows, that was an error from this. But what I really wanted to get to is,
Offering more than 1 million titles. The virtual shop sold books in
Okay,
all
I
50
wanna go-
states.
And that really started me thinking.
look at that guy. Jeff Bezos, 1994, comes up with Amazon. The most, it was a bookstore. He is now the richest man in the world.
Thinking, what kind of business could you build on the web?
Realizing cyberspace would be a great platform for commerce, Jeff Bezos researched top-selling mail order products and decided to create an online bookstore. Amazon.com opened its site to the world with this webpage on July 16, 1995, offering more than 1 million titles. The virtual shop sold books in all 50 states and 45 other countries within the first month.
We programmed a bell to ring every time there was an order. And it
Yep. So he's got the
took a
bookstore.
few days.
Look at it today.
Initial startup money for Amazon.com was very difficult. The first question I had to answer for almost all these investors, maybe all of them, is what's the internet? And which was very normal at that time. Most people didn't really know what was going on
what's
with
the
the internet or
internet?
what the
How am I
World
gonna
Wide
make
Web
money
was.
While many people use the terms internet and World Wide Web interchangeably, the two are not synonymous. The internet connects small computer networks to larger networks, and finally to a global system of computer networks around the world. The World Wide Web, better known as the web, is a system of interlinked computer documents that are accessed via the internet. While the web is a large portion of the internet is also used for email, instant messaging, and file transfer. The development of the internet began in 1969, when the US government said,
We went through all of that. But the point is, all of a sudden, you have this thing, Bezos and others said, hey, let's do something. We'll use it to sell books. And then after books, he's selling everything. We have a big fulfillment center, AKA warehouse, just north of town in Chattanooga by the Volkswagen plant. This starts up and then, okay, we have the system out there. Business people start finding ways to link individuals with the internet providers, IPs. Mine is EPB. Other people use the cable company or the phone company. So you start the internet, then new companies start helping you link to it. Amazon, like I said, 1994, did not make money for 10 years. But then all of a sudden, it's making bukus of money. First laptops, 1996. So you have books and then books that look like computers. Again, it's getting smaller, it's getting faster and more convenient. Interesting. Internet Act of 1996. The government tries to limit the internet. Tries to say, we don't like some of this porn. We don't like some of the violent stuff on there. Government tries to step in and regulate it. Supreme Court says no. Why? It's just like the FCC did, it's in 1926. 1926, the FCC steps in and says broadcast licensing is a public utility because not everybody can be channel 3 or channel 6 or 99.2 on the FM dial. And so the government can regulate a limited resource. But the internet is not a limited resource. Anybody could have a web page, so everybody has free speech. And because we have free speech, that means we could have violent speech or hateful speech or sexual speech or wrong speech. The government does not decide. Internet bust 1998 started a recession because all these people who got investors for the internet couldn't make money on it. Okay, we have a website. How do you make money? They got investors, but then the places went bankrupt. How can you make money on the internet? The way the media always does: subscriptions and advertising. So that's what we went to. In the 2000s, we start really going wireless. Before that, the internet was largely wired. You had to do it from your house. Start going wireless in the 2000s. Google starts in 2002. Search engines we've had for about a decade at that point, not quite, a little bit more. We've had, yeah, at that point you had search engines for a decade. The guys at Google said, how you make money? Advertising. They started selling advertising. Google Ads is now the biggest advertising income producer in the universe. So again, before then, when you had Mosaic and early browsers, they didn't do advertising. They just licensed the software and made some money, but the websites didn't make any money. Websites didn't make a lot of money in the 90s, but they did when they started using advertising. Wireless computing in the early 2000s, and then next big thing. The phone. We put it on the phone.
Goal is to spend as little as possible on things like commercials, so we can pass more savings to customers. When I saw what they're charging for holiday-themed stock videos these days, well, you could see what I decided to do. And that means we can afford to offer 3 months of free service on any plan, including
Google Ads
unlimited.
can't escape.
So let's all just use our imaginations, okay? Just imagine me someplace festive. No, don't make it weird.
Anyway.
This is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years. Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along.
Just like the PC. He knew he had something. Same guy, Steve Jobs.
That changes everything. And Apple has been, well, first of all, one's very fortunate if you get to work on just one of these in your career. Apple's been very fortunate. It's been able to introduce a few of these into the world. In 1984, we introduced the Macintosh.
Yep, you saw it.
It didn't just change Apple, it changed the whole computer industry. In 2001, we introduced the first iPod. And it didn't just change the way we all listen to music. It changed the entire music industry.
Yeah, dude, that's true. Became downloads
Well,
rather than CDs.
Today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. The first one is a widescreen iPod with touch controls.
Big deal. This is the real deal.
Revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device. So, 3 things: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod.
And they're all together in one place. There it is. Definitely
Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
They did.
And here it is. Now, actually, here it is, but we're going to leave it there for now. So, before we get into it, let me talk about a category of things. The most advanced phones are called smartphones, so they say. And they typically combine a phone plus some email capability, plus they say it's the internet, sort of the baby internet, into one device, and they all have.
Yeah, this is what they look like. We'll get into a few.
Stuff. People have a hard time
really
figuring
work
out.
all that well together. See, before then, they looked like that. Hard to type on, funny screens, some had styluses.
And what's wrong with their user interfaces? Well, the problem with them is really sort of in the bottom 40 there. It's this stuff right here. They all have these keyboards that are there whether you need them or not to be there. And they all have these control buttons that are fixed in plastic and are the same for every application. Well, every application wants a slightly different user interface, a slightly optimized set of buttons just for it. And what happens if you think of a great idea 6 months from now? You can't run around and add a button to these things. They're already shipped. So what do? It doesn't work because the buttons and the controls can't change. They can't change for each application, and they can't change down the road if you think of another great idea you want to add to this product. Well, how do you solve this? It turns out we have solved it. We solved it in computers 20 years ago. We solved it with a bitmap screen that could display anything we want.
Yeah, put this computer screen and the phone together. And
around the mouse, right? So what are we going to do? Oh, a stylus, right? We're going to use a stylus. No. No. Who wants a stylus? You have to get them and put them away and you lose them. Yuck. Nobody wants a stylus. So let's not use a stylus. We're going to use the best pointing device in the world. We're going to use a pointing device that we're all born with. We're born with 10 of them. We're going to use our finger.
All right, you get the point. They were thinking about this for years. They roll it out 2007, 2008. It's got a camera. And all of a sudden you have the phone and the internet in your pocket. Mind blown. And everything changes. There it is. So that was a big deal. iPad next year. Here's what changed everything. This is Tim Cook, who replaced Steve Jobs. or Jobs. It really took off in the teens in the past few years. Sold 1 billion of them. It's now the most valuable company in the world. Again, you only had, in those days, early on, you had the internet, then you started having in the teens all the apps. Everybody has an app now. And here's a camera. Problem now, supply chain, getting all that stuff from mostly China is just getting hard. But it's one of the biggest companies on the planet now. So changed lots of stuff. Then a more regulatory sort of thing. And also in the teens, as the iPhone as a smartphone takes off, and of course, just like Apple and the PC, Microsoft starts the Android system, different system, which they sold to different phone companies. Again, Microsoft has a different way of doing it. Apple, you have both the phone and the operating system. Microsoft launches Android, where they could put that on any phone. Anyway, one of the big things that's happened more recently is net neutrality. Hello. Net neutrality is the idea that the internet should be open for everybody. That originally, when we opened it up in 1992, your access should be the same as EPB's or Disney's or Sony's. And so the idea in the 90s and 2000s were to have everybody equal. The problem is, well, what if you're a Sony or a Disney and you want to do Disney Plus? Should you be denied the ability just because you have the resources and the programming? Should you be held back from having your own news and entertainment? Well, the other side of that is exactly what happened in Hollywood in the 40s, when the 5 studios also owned theaters and controlled the industry. The government said, no, can't have a monopoly. So that was the idea. Should Disney and Sony and NBC Peacock own everything we have or have unfair advantage on the internet? And the FCC said until 1917, no, you can't control everything. Well, 2017, different people are in office, different folks are on the FCC, and the FCC says, nah, Disney, give us Disney Plus, give us Peacock, charge all you want, and let people just watch Disney all day. We're not going to step in. If you want to have your own corner of the internet where you control everything, that's fine. So we let them do it. Advantages and disadvantages. People who like net neutrality, again, says it's real easy. Different people have, everybody's the same, have different ideas. You don't always have to work with Disney. More ethical, fair competition, and ongoing innovation, new ideas all the time. People who are against net neutrality say, yes, if you're a big corporation, you can invest more money to innovate and have new programming, new hardware and software, because you have the resources. Those resources can foster economic growth. You have new big industries, new jobs. more investors come into the picture. And when you have all that, everybody makes more money. And no rating system, nothing's better than another, they get to decide. Plus what it doesn't say here, free speech. The people who are against net neutrality say, hey, Disney's free speech is just as important as yours and mine. Should a company be denied its free speech just because they're rich? It's a good question. Again, before 2017, the government tried to step in and keep the internet equal. After that, they stepped down and we have Disney Plus. We have The Mandalorian. We have Baby Yoda because the FCC abandoned net neutrality.
The child.
Yes. Oh, well. So that brings us to today. Modern issues. Modern issues. Ownership. Who owns all the web pages? Google is buying up Google Images and information. You have to go through Google to get music and images. You have to go through Disney or Sony to get your programming, or Netflix. You have to pay subscriptions for things that used to be free. Reliability. Who knows what's true or what's not? The stuff that you pay for, often better. People who have reporters and fact checkers have to pay reporters and fact checkers, and that costs money. So you either do advertising or subscriptions or paywalls. Free stuff, go right ahead, find whatever you want. So professional stuff costs money, free stuff doesn't, but free stuff is a lot less reliable. Net neutrality I just talked about. Regulation. How do you control this? How do you control copyright, pornography, violence, especially when so much of it's international? A lot of the more sexual material comes from Europe or Asia. They don't have to listen to us. How do you regulate that? Copyright. The Chinese particularly take our shows, repackage them, put it on there, and they don't have to pay our producers of our content producers. That's the thing. The digital divide. That's real, folks. When we were totally online, and I know this is a synchronous course, totally online, well, some students, I used to get emails all the time. I have to go to a library to get access to a test or this course. I only have a phone. I can't see the videos. That's the digital divide. Not everybody has the same access. Who does have the access? People with more money. Access to good connections, good computers, good production materials that you could really make a good show. Everybody and their mother has a YouTube channel these days. The ones that stand out are the ones with better production values, and that costs money. So there is the digital divide, is that divide between people who have access and resources to max out on the internet, and the other side of the divide are people who don't have the access nor the resources. Another thing is the economic model to support media. Since everything's free, well, not everything, free content, you and I could put anything on the social media, people read it, but can't make a living at it, except by selling advertising. And who gets the advertising? Well, who owns YouTube? Facebook. So you have an ad on YouTube, You put a video on YouTube, YouTube puts an ad on it. You don't get the money for that ad, even if it's your video. It's YouTube and Facebook gets the money. So, you know, put up anything you want for free. Who gets the money are the big internet providers. And that's related to the decoupling of advertising. Media outlets rely on advertising. If you're going to go through the New York Times or NBC or CNN or Fox, they need advertising. Why does an advertiser need to advertise on a network when they can email you, they can send you all sorts of stuff for free? So mainstream media outlets don't have the income they used to, and they didn't really figure that out until late. So that opens the door to all sorts of crappy false stuff that's free. But the advertising doesn't have to go necessarily to the media outlet anymore. They can sell it directly to you. So there's less money in the more entrepreneurial side, the startups and the responsible media. And, you know, that the advertisers can come directly to you. So the technology is changing, the economics is changing. We're all watching different channels and different sites. There's very little tying it together, which is why this course is important. So you understand how we got here. So you understand how this stuff works. And ultimately, my hope is that you understand enough of how this works that you can make your own good choices. Well, that's the whole point. Questions? Questions on any of this stuff? Again, this will be on the test. I will do a test review next Tuesday. I will post it. But beyond that, that's how a bill becomes a law, as they say. Any other questions? Rock and roll. Have a good rest of the day. I'll post this shortly. Thanks, Jake. Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks, Quentin. Thanks, Claire's, both Claire's who are always here. Thank you, guys. You've been super. I will hopefully see you around.